Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast Postgame Show. Hope you guys are having a great night. It's Tuesday. I almost thought it was Monday, but we do have a Detroit Pistons postgame podcast. I actually have to grab my notes because I forgot them on this hotel I'm staying at right now because I'm not actually at home, but I did bring my notebook so we can go over these quarter notes. And we can kind of, just go over this Pistons win tonight, which I think we all expected the Detroit Pistons to come in and beat the worst team in the league in the Washington Wizards. But let's go over these quarter notes. And then, as always, we will open up this show to questions and comments. Okay. So the first thing that we're probably going to start with was the first quarter. And right off the bat, Washington seemed like they had a little bit more juice very early on into the game. Uh, it was a tied score. Very early in the first quarter. It was like 6-6. JB takes a timeout, and whatever he said, something clicked. Woke the guys up, and the Pistons started playing with more energy, pushing the pace. And Washington kind of looks like, what the hell? What the fuck? Like, what's going on, right? And then we have the Chris Middleton in the Cade Cunningham altercation. A lot of altercations in this game we're going to get into. So we had the Chris Middleton and Cade shove, which I don't know why Jordan Poole tried to shove Jaylen Duren. That was hilarious. He shoved him. JD said he's sure about that, and then he walked away, kind of backed off. It was really funny. If you guys haven't seen it, I'm sure it's all over social media. Really funny. Cade did get 2 fouls in the first quarter. This was a game where a lot of the fouls that Cade had were just reach-ins, very fixable fouls, nothing to really be concerned with overall. Isaiah Stewart in the first quarter also brought a lot of energy, blocking shots and just being around the basket, right place, right time. And the Pistons get themselves a nice little cushion, nice little lead to end the first with the score of 35-21. Going into the second quarter, Malik Beasley doing what Malik Beasley does, Threesley, as a lot of us call him, making threes. We pushed it in transition, and then we get another altercation in the second quarter. This time was Marcus Smart's turn. So he thought he got fouled, which this is what led up to the altercation. Isaiah Stewart defended him. I don't remember if he scored or not. I don't think he did. He may have. I don't know. I have to go back and watch. But, he thought he got fouled, said some stuff to Stu. And then maybe, 20, 30 seconds later, he's yapping with Dennis Schroeder. Stu goes to the bench. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to get involved in this. I'm not getting a technical. So Marcus Smart tries to go after Stu as he's on the bench, and Ron Holland intercepts him. So Marcus Smart went after Isaiah Stewart, talked some shit to him, and then he tried to go at Ron, but somehow double technicals. Isaiah Stewart got a technical on the bench. Marcus Smart got a technical. And it kind of woke the Pistons up a little bit. They padded a huge lead into the second quarter. Duren was scoring, Cade was scoring. Everyone collectively was just doing their part. And going into halftime, they had a 66-49 lead. Coming out of halftime, they still were playing with a lot of that energy. They were up almost 30 points at one point. They had a 25-point lead. Ausar was staying active. And it just looked like the Pistons were just punching the Wizards in the mouth. Like, the Wizards defense just looked so lost at times tonight. And you're seeing why they're a rebuilding team. You're seeing why they're one of the worst teams in basketball right now. And the Pistons took care of business in the third quarter as well. And I want to give this player a shout out. We'll probably talk about him a little bit more in the podcast after I'm done going over these quarter notes. Is Simone Fontecchio. Not so much for his offense, which he did make a couple of shots tonight, which happy for him. It was his defense. He had 2 key blocks in this game that really, helped the Pistons pad this lead. And one of his blocks was at the end of the third quarter, which led to a Ron Holland transition pass to Malik Beasley in the corner for 3, and Beasley shimmied right in front of the Wizards bench to give the Pistons a 93-74 lead. But you just have to give props to Simone. Really good defensive game out of him tonight. I know we're always on his ass because he hasn't been consistent, but nights like tonight where he's trying defensively and he's making some shots, it looks like he's doing something out there. So happy for him. It's just the fall off from last year to this year is just really noticeable for myself, and I think you guys that consume these Detroit Pistons night in and night out. But going into the fourth quarter, the Pistons played very sloppy. Let's be honest. You were up 25 points. The Wizards cut this down to 12 points. And JB said pregame that a big lesson that they learned on this West Coast trip was closing out fourth quarters. And he said there was some slippage by this team of not closing out games. And when I saw a 25, 24-point lead go down to 12, I could kind of see what he was talking about. They've been taking their foot off the gas as of late, and that is not something that you want to develop a habit when the season is winding down and you're getting into playoff basketball, because you can shoot yourself in the foot that way. But Cade did come in around the 6-minute mark, and Cade and Tobias really closed this game out for me, in the closing minutes. I'm sure we're going to talk about the Rashawn's home. He elbowed Ausar in the face. He got ejected. A few minutes later, Marcus Smart elbowed Tim Hardaway Jr. He got a flagrant one. But, the Pistons do win this game by 20. They close it out. Tobias hit some key shots. Cade made some good shots down the stretch. But 123, 103 was the final score. But can kind of see what JB was talking about. Even with the Wizards, and like I said, they're the worst team in basketball. They're a tanking team, but they're still an NBA team at the end of the day. When you have teams like OKC this Saturday, you can't have a fourth quarter like you did to start against a team like OKC. You just can't do it, because OKC is a team that will take full advantage of that. What JB is basically saying is I need you guys to bring consistent effort for a full 48 minutes and close these games out. When we have a lead, keep your foot on the gas and just bury these guys. You can't give them any chance to think they can get back in this game and upset you. But this is a little rant. I agree with JB in that sense, but I do want to open up the show to comments, questions, overall thoughts with you guys. Looks like we do have a couple of questions from you guys. And we are going to get into them. So I want to go to Jay Hart, and he said, handle business tonight as expected. JD's improvement has really been on full display. His workout sessions with Sheed over All-Star break triggered something else in his game. I will say, JD's effort and consistency is definitely there, Jay Hart. And you're right, it is on full display. He had a double-double tonight, couple of blocks. He's playing better basketball as of late. Been playing better basketball for going on almost 3 months now. He's been playing better. Honestly, at this point, if he's not having a double-double or he's not, blocking a few shots, I'm kind of surprised now because he's done it so much now that I expected. But yeah, he did have a pretty good game against the Washington team. I will say, though, I do want to give this player credit for the Washington Wizards, and that is Alex Sarr. I think Alex Sarr is going to be a problem in a few years. He's shown so many flashes every time the Pistons have played him where it's just he can stretch the floor, he can protect the rim a little bit. Washington got a really good franchise center to build around. But I do want to give Alex Sarr some of his flowers tonight. But I want to go into Alex Jasper because he's talking about Jaylen Duren and extension talks, which we've probably talked about extension talks on this podcast at nauseum. And Alex says, give Jaylen Duren a check of 5 years, $150 million tomorrow. I don't care if he has to wait to sign it. Keep filling the holes around Cade, Ausar, Ron, JD, Ivy, and Beef. Special core with a bright future. Okay, lot to unpack here. Alex, I love the enthusiasm as always, man. You're always in these post-game podcasts. And, you're always either asking questions or, just bringing good overall topics to these podcasts. Here's the thing, man. $30 million for a Jaylen Duren That's a lot of money. Not saying he's not worth it, but I think that would kind of be an overpay, in my opinion. Now, if you want to compare another center that just got a similar extension to what you just said, it's Alperen Sengun. Alperen Sengun, I think we can all agree offensively, um, is better than Jaylen Duren. Obviously, Jaylen Duren's better around the basket within, a good like 5 to 8 feet, but Sengun got around that money. I don't really think you're going to have to give Jaylen Duren $30 million to keep him. I don't think 5 years for 150 is something that this front office should consider. Just because you also have Jaden Ivey to consider. You're going to have Ausar coming up in a few years, and then Ron, and you have Cade for a supermax going into next season. You still have Stu on this team. I think if you start overpaying your core, what is going to happen is what you saw during the Stan Van Gundy era. Stan Van Gundy overpaid for Andre Drummond. He overpaid for Reggie Jackson. And what did a lot of Pistons fans bitch and complain about? We don't have any cap space. You can still have conversations about extending Jaylen Duren, but I think 5 years, 150, that's way too much money, man. It's way too much money. I think JD could get around $100 million, but 150 for me as a fan, I think that's where I think it's a little bit too much, just because the effort for the first couple of months of the season was not consistent, and he did admit that he was playing soft. I think his exact words were, "I was on some soft shit," but I think JD is a part of this core. He's 21 years old, doesn't turn 22, I believe, until next season. Um, you can keep them, but you don't have to break the bank to keep them. 150, I think, is just too much money, in my personal opinion. But I do appreciate your questions and just comments every post game podcast. I have a comment from Shift God. We got the whole league crashing out. Can't make this up. It does seem like every time the Detroit Pistons do play a team, there's a scuffle, there's a fight. And I think that attributes just to the Detroit Pistons and how gritty they play, how physical they are. And JD said in his post game press conference that FanDuel did broadcast is like, we kind of look forward to these moments. Like, we like playing that type of style of basketball. He says it's boring when, JB's not getting into it. The crowd's quiet. He's like, we feed off that energy. We like when fans are loud. We like getting under the skin of opponents because we play with emotion. And I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing JB Bickerstaff's philosophies leak out into the players. And that's why you see, Marcus Smart getting a little upset because he thought he got fouled and wanted to retaliate against Isaiah Stewart. You saw Chris Middleton shove Cade Cunningham because Cade was kind of bumping with Bob Carrington. They didn't like it. They didn't like that type of physicality. And I think what you're going to start to see during the JB Bickerstaff era is that's the way that the Detroit Pistons are going to play. Like, they want to play that type of basketball. They want to be scrappier than you. They want to out-fight you, out-rebound you, out-battle you in the paint. Like, that's the type of style of a JB Bickerstaff-led basketball team. And I think that's why you see so many of these opposing teams, quote-unquote, crashing out, as you said. We've seen it since like day one. We've seen it in preseason. Like, Ron Holland was wrestling for a basketball against the Phoenix Suns in that preseason, mind you. So, and I think that style of basketball also resonates with the city of Detroit, and that those are the type of basketball teams that we loved watching growing up. I know some of you guys were very fortunate to watch the Bad Boys during that era. I was not born. I've only seen 30 for 30s and watched old games back, but they were a very physical, gritty basketball team. The Go in the Work crew. A lot of teams struggle to score the basketball against that team, especially when you had Ben Wallace and you had Rasheed Wallace. I think that's what you're starting to see. You're starting to see like the just, in your face, blue collar, you're not going to come in here and punk us type shit. Like, that's the new Detroit Pistons led by JB Bickerstaff. And that's why you're seeing so many opposing teams not taking exception to it. That's why. And I love it as a Piston fan, because I know a lot of people say you can't bring that type of basketball back. Like, the game has changed. Well, Pistons are bringing that type of basketball back. They're bringing that physical style of basketball back, and I absolutely love it as a Piston fan. Got a comment from Nate Myers. Ron Holland always talking shit and getting in arguments. Love to see that in a rookie. He is. He is. I think since day one, even in I believe summer league, he was talking shit to Matas Pazelis, telling him like, "Hey man, I'm gonna dunk on your ass in summer league." Even though those guys are boys and they're friends and they play on the G League Ignite team together, like Ron's got that dog in him, and he's never kind of backed down from anyone. Like I remember him squaring up against Jordan Clarkson tonight. He was sticking up for Stu with Marcus Smart. Like Ron is a rookie, is fearless, and I think more casual Pistons fans have noticed that Ron is about that life, and he's ready to stick up for any of his teammates. Doesn't matter who it is. And I think at the end of the day, it's really good basketball because people just love that type of Detroit Pistons basketball, and so do I. I love that we have a rookie that gets it, that is ready to scrap. He's a blur in transition, can finish really well around the rim. Absolutely love it. I got a comment from Drew Thomas, tied for the 4th seed, and we're currently in the 5th seed. Which, hey man, it's going to be really interesting these next 16 or so games to see where the seeding is with the Pistons, Pacers, and Bucks, and what happens with the Knicks. Don't know if they can hold on to that 3 seed with Jalen Brunson going out. But what I will say, Drew, is I would keep an eye on it, especially with the Bucks schedule. It is a little tougher. Um, but I love that we're tied for the 5th seed. We're right are tied for the 4 seed. We're in the 5th seed right now. So I'm excited, man. I can't remember the last time I was so excited about a Detroit Pistons team. In recent memory, it was probably like the 2015-16 team, and even that team was only competing for the 8 seed at that time. But exciting times are ahead for Pistons basketball fans, and I love it. I got a comment from Spare Account. Is Cade efficiency from three something to be concerned? He hasn't been shooting great from three the past couple of weeks. I haven't actually done a deep dive on his 3-point numbers probably in a month. I'm going to have to actually do that. Just the eye test without looking at the analytics or the numbers. Spare Account. I will say like the form still looks consistent. Maybe it's tired legs. Maybe the ball's not going in as much as we want it to. But I'll definitely have to look into the numbers to see if there has been kind of a fall off over these past 10 or so games. Ryan P. I love that we have the bad boys team in the past because that chippy mentality is what the '04 team embodied, and this team as well. It's more fun to watch than the other teams, in my opinion. I'm glad you said this because like the '04 team constantly would bring up the bad boys. They would say we would watch old tape of Isaiah, Joe, Vinny, Rodman, Mahorn for inspiration. And like, how can we adapt that to the way we play? Before like the Go in the Work crew won that championship. So they could watch tape on them and also ask them questions because those guys were around. And I think like this iteration of this Pistons team, now it's brand new. JB's the first year head coach, but they're trending in the right direction, in my opinion. I think you can watch the way Chauncey, Ben, Tayshaun, Rip play team basketball. I think that is still adaptable in 2025. I think the team defense as well is adaptable in 2025. There's a lot you can take from the 2004 and the Bad Boy Championships, especially Ben Wallace. Like, I know people try to compare. I remember draft night when we drafted Stewart. A lot of people compared Stu to Ben Wallace, which obviously I thought it was a bad take at the time. Not saying that Stu is the rim protector or the defender that Ben Wallace is, but the drastic improvement in rim protection with Stewart this year is something that people aren't talking about, and I think they should, Ryan, just because the way that he's protecting the rim night in and night out, the guy's blocking multiple shots a game, and Stu is getting a reputation of being an elite shot blocker, being an elite rim protector. And I can't tell you the last time we've had one of those. I really can't. Like we've had guys that we've signed in free agency and they were, okay at protecting the rim, but Stu is doing it at such a high level right now. Opponents are shooting, under 50% when they're guarded by him. He's just playing really good basketball right now on the defensive end of the floor. And I see so many of these big NBA accounts just make, um, kind of, I don't know, cheap shots that I've never seen Isaiah Stewart in a highlight, just him fighting with people, especially after the Steph Curry stuff, because Golden State fans are so insufferable sometimes. But I think you have a big core piece in Isaiah Stewart. And the contract, I know at the time, a lot of us were kind of like, really? Like, we're going to give that guy $16 million a year. But you kind of look across the NBA landscape, like that contract is actually pretty fair for the player that you're getting in Isaiah Stewart. And I think a lot of us are starting to appreciate him. I've always appreciated him. I've just always felt that from my standpoint, previous coaches didn't really use him in the correct way that I think he could be effective. And I think JB gets what uh, Isaiah Stewart wants to do and what his strengths and weaknesses are. And I think JB identified right away that this guy could be a very good rim protector and a very good defender. And I think that's what we've seen out of him this year. I know I rambled a little bit, but Ryan got me fired up with the bad boys teams and the 04 teams. I was kind of just going down memory lane of like when I was a kid and just those defensive teams that we had with like Ben and Sheed and Rip and Tay. My bad, you guys. I apologize. I want to get to a couple more comments and questions with you guys. Got a comment from Thomas. Haven't seen him in one of these post game podcasts in a while. So shout out to him. Everybody thinks they have grit and toughness until they play us. They found out we're about that life and then resort to cheap stuff and foul baiting. Yeah, like the amount of elbows that the Pistons got tonight, especially with the Ausar, like that could have been a lot worse than it actually was. And I think that's why Rashawn Holmes got ejected. But you're right. A lot of teams think that they're physical and they think that they're gritty. But it's so funny. Like, we're probably going to talk about it later on the podcast this weekend. But like Shaq saying that the Pistons are boring, but I don't think the Pistons are boring. I really don't. I don't know how you turn on a Pistons game and say that's a boring team. Why would I watch them? They get under the skin of a lot of opponents. They have fun. They shoot a lot of threes. Jaylen Duren's always catching lobs. Cade Cunningham on any given night is on triple double watch. Like this is a really fun up and coming young basketball team. We have a comment from Cheap Detroit Sports Memes. I made bank on this game tonight. Well, shout out to you, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you hopping in on this podcast and just letting the people know that you made bank on this Pistons victory over the Washington Wizards tonight. Got a comment from Case Crack. The iteration of the Pistons does feel very bad boy-esque. I love that we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting internally through the draft. If you look back, Case Cracked, if you the bad boys before they won the championships, like they didn't hit on every draft pick, and drafts back then were crazy. Like they had more than 2 rounds, but like they got Rodman, they got Sally, they drafted Isaiah, Joe, like foundational pieces, right? And then they were able to add people in free agency or via trade, and they built their core and their foundation. And I think that's what you're seeing. Like Cade's a foundation franchise player. Stu's a rotational big. Ron Holland is going to be very, very good. Sar Thompson has shown flashes of being a better ball handler, and to me, I already think he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. Like, there's so many pieces. I didn't even mention Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey had a career before he broke his fibula. Like, there's a lot of pieces on this team that I don't even think they've really scratched the surface. And I really want to keep this team together because I'm really interested to see how much JB Bickerstaff can actually develop these guys even more and squeeze out as much talent as they have to try to, get it on the basketball court because I don't really think we've seen, a maximized Cade Cunningham because he's still very young. He's not even 25 years old yet. I think there's still another year to Cade Cunningham to get even better. Same with Jaden Ivey, Jaylen Duren, and Ausar and Ron. Even Marcus Sasser, to an extent, doesn't get to play a whole lot. There's a lot of young, fun guys on this team, and then adding these mixtures of veterans this year I think it's just really helped them, gain confidence. Um, Detroit sports meme says, "Here, I'll share the wealth." After he did place a bet on the Pistons to beat the Wizards tonight. I appreciate the super chat, man. I really do. Happy that you did make some money. I feel like it's actually stealing. If anytime a team plays the Wizards because like they're the worst team like it's like I remember reading, and I know this is completely off topic, and maybe we can laugh at it now, but we probably wouldn't have laughed at it last year. Um, there was a guy that bet $100 during the 28 game losing streak, and then like it came out that like the guy made over like 100 grand from the Pistons losing 28 straight. So I kind of feel like the Wizards and some of the tanking teams, especially this late in the season, because a lot of teams are waving the flag for Cooper Flag. Um, I think you could make a lot of money, especially if you guys are into sports gambling. I tend to stay away from it because I'm really bad at it. But I do want to get into Drew's question, or more of a comment, it looks like. Stu's going crazy this year. Unfortunately, most people that aren't Pistons fans think he's just a nuisance with no value on the floor. Yeah, like that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like I saw a big NBA page. I'm sure you guys have seen it if you're basketball fans. NBA memes saying like, I've never seen an Isaiah Stewart highlight. They like to poke fun at NBA players, and that's kind of like what they do. That's their niche. But like we know Isaiah Stewart has developed the 3-point shot. We know that defensively he can move his feet with not only bigs, forwards, and some slower guards. He does a very good job of moving his feet and protecting the rim. I think that's where more of my comment was coming from. But yeah, if you're not tuning in to a Pistons basketball game night in and night out, then you probably wouldn't know that Stu has done um, a, a good job of just upping his defensive game this year. Comment from Case Crack. Ausar had looked off the last 4 to 5 games. Is it just foul trouble? Maybe hitting a wall from his comeback? Seems frustrated tonight. From what I've noticed, I think teams have adjusted to his cutting a little bit, him bringing up the ball on certain possessions. He does look frustrated. I will give you that. I think what Ausar has to do is find new ways where he can be effective. Crashing the glass, which is something that I think he does a very good job at. Cutting, which I think he's developed into an even better cutter this year. I'd like to see him shoot more. There's been multiple times where they'll swing the ball out on the corner for 3 and he refuses to shoot. He'd rather handle it and get close to the basket. Now, I don't know if that's by design. I don't know if the coaching staff says, "Hey, we don't want you shooting threes. Just try to, take it to the basket. We believe in your handle." Um, if that is the case of him, not having, confidence in shooting threes, then that might be a little bit of a red flag, but we don't really know what JB Bickerstaff and the coaching staff's game plans are for Ausar Thompson. Just from what I've seen from my vantage point, is it looks like teams are adjusting just to him in transition in the way he likes to score around the basket. But I think overall, the month of February from January, he had a huge jump in points per game. I believe it was like 8 to 13. I think in March, more teams are scouting for him, but it'll be really interesting to see if Ausar can, watch more tape in terms of how can I get better? How can I, expose these defenses because they're throwing stuff at me that I haven't seen after I've upped my game. So that's just kind of what I've seen case cracked. It'll be interesting to see like how he does adjust to that. Have a comment from David Kennard. I hope I said your last name right. If I didn't, I do apologize. We have to prove it in the playoffs. Push the playoff push because the national media does not respect us yet. The TNT crew missed the boat. I agree with you. I think when you come off a 14-win season, not a lot of national pundits are going to take you seriously, and they just won their 37th game, right? I honestly think that I've seen more national pundits actually talk positively about the Detroit Pistons. Like I was just listening to, I think, Bill Simmons' podcast. He's talking about All NBA. He said he would have Cade, second team All NBA, over a guy like an Anthony Edwards. So these conversations are happening. I think that you are right. You are correct in this assessment. I think for the Pistons to get the national respect, you have to go out there and prove it. Um, if they win, let's just say 45 games or 44 games, I think you'll have the national media's respect. From going from 14 to 45 wins would be an incredible jump. I don't really think we've seen that in the NBA quite often. And if you win a playoff game, you get the monkey off your back because the monkey on the Pistons' back right now, David, is haven't won a playoff game in a long time. Have won a playoff series. You get that monkey off your back in terms of, okay, they won a playoff game, they won a playoff series. These aren't the same Pistons that we've been clowning for, the past 10, like what, 15 years since the going to work crew kind of was dissembled and they kind of went through a rebuild with Joe Dumars in the later part of his, you know, GM career with the Pistons. I think you'll start seeing brand new narratives and brand new agendas being pushed out with the Pistons. But I think if fans, if we want to see more consistent positive takes from people like Shaq, from people like ESPN, TNT, The Ringer, whatever it may be, wherever you guys really get your, national news, the Pistons just have to win more. That's it. Like winning cures all. And I think at the end of the day, ever since, Bill Davison passed away and Tom Gore has purchased the team, this hasn't really been a basketball team that has gotten much respect around the NBA, and deservedly so. Like, they've been to the playoffs twice, but they got swept twice. They tried to do a half-ass rebuild the first time with Joe D. Joe D gets fired. Stan Van comes in. They win 44 games, and then he trades for Blake Griffin. That sets us back. We can't get off Blake's money. We have to start from ground zero. And then we get Cade Cunningham and we get Isaiah Stewart, and we've been building for 4 to 5 years. So it's just kind of been a cycle, and the Pistons actually rebuilt the right way and they didn't fucking half-ass it. And I think you're starting to see the patience of these guys developing. And it's really fun as a fan because a lot of these guys aren't even 25 years old yet. A lot of these guys haven't, quote unquote, got paid outside of Cade and Stu. But yeah, man, I really can't wait just for how this core can develop. We'll do 2 more questions. I want to do Thomas and Case Crack, then I'm going to wrap this podcast up with you guys. And I think they're great questions. I did talk about this on the podcast. I don't know if you saw it, Thomas. I had the Detroit Bad Boys podcast, the pin down on Blake Silverman and West Davenport. We talked about this. And I know you have a comment or a question rather, and he talks on Cade for most improved player. I'm sure Norman Powell has it unlocked, but do you think he should be in the conversation? So the last MIP I looked, Cade was the odds-on favorite. He was a negative 600 to win it. Norm Powell has been injured as of late. I think my interpretation of most improved is different, I think, from some people. And I can explain to you my interpretation of it. Maybe you have a different opinion, and that's okay. I look at Cade Cunningham, and I think he has improved this year, but I've always viewed the most improved player of the year of more of like a guy that maybe didn't really average a whole lot. Like I've used this example multiple times. Like maybe a guy that averaged 6 points and he goes up to 15, right? And you mentioned Norm Powell, and he fits the bill perfectly. Norm Powell averaged 13 points last year. He's up to 23 this year. I think the award should go to Norm Powell. But what Vegas is telling us is a lot of people are placing bets on Cade Cunningham to win most improved. It's not like his stats have like dramatically, increased. Not like Norm's, but what's increased is the total wins on this basketball team. You went from 14 and you're currently at 37, and you have, I think, 16 or 17 left. I think that's why Cade Cunningham is the most improved right now. I personally think that he could win it. He's the odds-on favorite currently. I think if Jaden Ivey didn't get hurt, he was really high in the odds this summer. I think they had Jaden Ivey as like the second highest odds to win it. I honestly think that what Vegas is looking at is the Detroit Pistons are the most improved team, and they want to give the award to someone on the Detroit Pistons because they're the best story in basketball this season. I don't think anyone saw them going from 14 to 40 wins in a season. I know there's a couple of you in the YouTube chat that have, and the only other Detroit Pistons content creator that I've ever seen say 14 to 40 is Everything King. That's it. No one else can say that they saw this. Um, and I'll give those guys those respect because they deserve it, because they saw something that I didn't, and maybe they saw something that um, other people didn't. But that's just kind of like my take on the most improved. I think the NBA really wants to, give most improved to a Detroit Piston. But I'm not really mad at that because like if Cade wins it, like All Star, um, and All NBA and most improved, that's a pretty good season for Cade Cunningham, if you ask me. I have a comment from Case Crack. This is the first time in 15 years where you can actually see the vision for the future. The Blake era was just pieced together playoff canon and a fodder group with no depth. Yeah, like I agree with you. I thought the Blake trade, I didn't really think it was necessary because you still had pieces that were winning, but like obviously when an owner gets involved and the owner hasn't won anything and he's really anxious. Like, I don't really fault Tom Gores for trying to get a guy like Blake because Blake played some of the best ball of his career in Detroit. He really did. And we have to give him that respect. Obviously, he blew out his knee, torn his meniscus, and he was never the same player after that. So Blake has my respect that he was willing to go out there, sacrifice probably years off his career for a playoff game. Obviously, the Pistons got swept by the Bucks, but I've always had respect for Blake. I know some people don't because they didn't like the trade, and that's understandable. I understand it. Like I still have debates with people about the Blake trade. Like I thought that the way that they handled contracts previously to leading up to the Blake trade, they've could have done better in the draft. To kind of maximize that current team. Like you could have drafted Donovan Mitchell over Luke Kennard. There were so many missed draft picks in the SVG era that I'm not going to bring them up, but I'm sure you guys, going down that rabbit hole and having revisionist history, we can probably all agree that the Stan Van era was an era in which we whiffed in the draft, we overspent in free agency, and that team was capped at the 8th seed. And that's why so many of us were calling for a rebuild because we're like, this team isn't going to win a championship, tear it down. And look how long ago that was, and look where we're at currently. But I appreciate, like, I hate when people kind of dunk on shit on them. But hey, you guys are welcome to your opinions. I don't like to gatekeep anybody in the Pistons community. I think gatekeeping is weird to me. I just don't like it. But just have one more comment from David. Thank you for always staying up and doing these. It's always a pleasure to watch and interact with Pistons. Appreciate you, David. Really do. But I'm going to wrap this up. We've been on for about 40 minutes. If you guys could do me a favor on your way out, hit that like button. It does really help the YouTube algorithm push up my content to more Detroit Pistons fans just like you guys. And if you are an audio listener and you listen to the podcast on the audio side, make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you do get your Pistons podcast. That is also a way to support me and the podcast. But until next time, I will see you guys immediately after the Detroit Pistons Washington Wizards game. Yeah, we play the Wizards again on Thursdays on 3-1-3 day. So it should be chippy, maybe a little bit less elbows. But until next time, you guys, go Pistons. Have a good night. Peace.